Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and joining us here tonight in the studio to shed more light on tonight's topic, we're joined by Dr. Alaa as the Secretary General of the Federation of the Chambers of Commerce. Dr. Aziz, thank you very much for joining us.
It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, sir. Now, Dr. Aziz, first off, we all want to know a quick review over the previous five editions of the Egypt Cannes Conference. What was highlighted and what have been the achievements that we're still enjoying until now?
Egypt Cannes as a concept is something some other countries actually have succeeded in doing. You have millions of Egyptians living abroad. These millions include a big number of CEOs of big companies. You have people who have technology, who have know-how, who have novel management practices, who have something that we need. And the whole concept is bringing back to Egypt, not to settle in Egypt, but to contribute to Egypt, whether as investors, as supporters to existing investments, as supporters to our strategic plan. It's a way of getting top-notch expertise, I don't want to say free of charge, but coming back home. And this has gone in, first it was general, then it started becoming more focused, so every edition started being focused on sector or a couple of sectors, and the next edition would be on manufacturing, on industry.
Yes.
And it has succeeded. It really brought a lot of investors. It brought back a lot of people with vision. I can give you a simple example, is what Dr. Magdi Ayoub is doing in Upper Egypt and replicating. He was an expat, and he came first time on one of those conferences. And this is how the ball gets rolling, and how Egyptians who are still affiliated to the country or has a loose affiliation to the country as a country, they have it to their families, now they're contributing to the country.
Yes. Well, if we're making use of the Egyptian expatriates with their experiences and their know-how, how well are the foreign the domestic industrialists and the domestic investors soaking up this sort of information and this experience and really trying to transform it or really translate it in their own, yes, and acquire it in our own local industries?
The conference is always three parts. There's the political part where the government at large, and being under the auspices of His Excellency President Sisi is a very clear message, gives the clear government support. Then the second part is sectorial, where we have success stories as well as visionaries from the local industry who are presenting what do they have in the sectors, what opportunities exist in the country, and having also expats who are showing what they can contribute. Then the most important part is the last part, which is our contribution to the conference every time, which is the matchmaking, where we are not asking the expats to come and invest. This is maybe the ultimate goal in the end. What we're asking them is to link them to existing businesses, to existing services, manufacturing, whatever the sector is, to contribute with their knowledge, their know-how, their technologies, to help them upgrade or provide market access.
And do you feel that the general inclination or the general trend of the Egyptian expatriates, does it really focus on one specific sector? Is everybody interested in one sector more than the other, or is it the full spectrum of the industrial sector?
If you look at the repatriations of expats on global basis, you find number one is China, number two is India, number three is Egypt. We have millions of Egyptians. So practically you have all sectors. So there is not a specific single sector, but there is what Egypt is competitive at, and there could be somebody who can provide an added value to that competitive edge. And here is where we do the matchmaking. But with this huge number, and actually Her Excellency Minister Nabila has been doing an excellent job mobilizing them. lots of them have the affinity to the country. So when they come, they'd like to contribute. But the problem is they've been working for years in multinationals in a system. So you have to put them in a quasi-system equivalent to what they're in. And this is where the public-private partnership between the government and the private sector, where we try to pave the way for easy entrance for them into the Egyptian economy.
Well, if we're talking about paving the way and really helping allocating their interests in the country, we've been talking about the investment law for many years now. Is it a similar sort of dilemma or a similar sort of challenge trying to have a proper, good, satisfactory investment law for the foreign investors, same as for allocating the Egyptian expatriates in Egypt?
Okay, let's be realistic. There is no foreign investor who will come to a country that the local investor is not investing. So we have laws that are King Farouk, the first king of Egypt and Sudan and the Valley of Darfur, still actually enacted. They're still there. We were lucky that during the Committee of 50, when the constitution has been amended, the new constitution that has been enacted by Egypt, part of it was a golden opportunity to upgrade our laws. And actually the parliament has done a wonderful job with the government, with the private sector, with the civil society, where a huge number of laws have been upgraded. And let's not forget, this is the first time we have a constitution that talks about free market economy. So it paved the way for all the new laws, the modern business laws that are being that were enacted in the past period. Why an investment law? If you go to a country like Singapore, they don't have an investment law. You do an investment law and you have this jungle of laws that to amend and correct will take ages. So the only way is you create a fast-track cross-cutting law that abolishes, cancels, modifies the articles that are not conducive to ease of doing business. This is why you do have an investment law, and this is why you keep amending it. Because every now and then you discover that you have an obstacle, a bottleneck that you need to overcome, and to change that major law is not easy. So just one article, either canceling the application of this law to investors or correcting the major problem that exists.
And how long would that sort of transformation take place up until the old laws are deemed obsolete?
In 2010, we concluded something called the Guillotine Initiative. We had the government with private sector where we sat and we analyzed about 56,000 pieces of legislation, not only laws, we're talking constitutional court decrees, laws, presidential decrees, prime ministerial decrees that are affecting business. And we came up with about 24,000 that needs to be, we all agreed that they need to be cancelled. And this was entering the parliament in January 2011. And then we had the revolution, no parliament. And the problem is, ever since, whenever we start replicating the story, they say you have to start from zero, you have to do it again. We did it a couple of times and then it stopped. Now the process is back in place and we hope to have this one article law saying annulling the attached list of laws.
Dr. Ayaz, now when we talk about getting the experiences and the expertise of the Egyptian expatriates, and you've mentioned they're working within their own systems, multinational systems, and this sort of nature. Now, applying it here in Egypt, you've mentioned that we have millions of workers already existing in the workforce and people who are getting educated. And one of the topics that have always been discussed is vocational training and training the workers and training, be it in the private sector, governmental institutions, part of the educational system up until graduation. Now, how much attention is being paid to this sort of vocational training, and how much of an obstacle is it constituting in front of the industrial sector?
You have three issues here. You have the fast track, which is training. you have the long term, which is education. We're talking about vocational. And both of them, there is huge attention by the government, huge attention by the private sector, huge attention by the donor community. We have major projects. The European Union has the TVET program. We have the Mubarak Call initiative by Germany. We have the Don Bosco by Italy. So you have a huge number of initiatives. And for the first time today, we have a strategy. And this is the most important thing that we're looking forwards to. What we're looking at also is a third element, which is very important, which is international accreditation. Why? I, as a foreign investor, when I come to Egypt and I want to recruit workers, I need to see a piece of paper saying that this is a qualified vocational worker. And this piece of paper coming from the standard traditional channels is null and void. Nobody would respect it. So it's important for attracting foreign direct investment. And we're working now with international organizations that we have a dual certificate, the Egyptian plus the internationally acknowledged one. What's more important in that aspect is not only FDI. The number one source of foreign currency in Egypt at the moment is the repatriations of Egyptian expats. And Egyptian expats, especially in the Gulf, are not paid as high as their equivalents from Philippines, from India, from other competitive countries. Why? Because they have this piece of paper that says this is a welder, this is whatever vocation he is specialized in, that internationally is acknowledged. The Egyptian doesn't. So he's paid less. So just by doing this international accreditation, you will probably, I don't want to say double, which is my personal opinion, but at least you'll increase 30-40% the income of Egyptians working abroad, and automatically you'll increase the repatriations.
And how could you actually get that sort of accreditation?
We're working on it. We chose the best 3 organizations in the world in the TVET sector, and we're linking them with initiatives in Egypt where a dual certificate is being enacted.
Dr. Ayaz, now it's been a big topic of discussions over the past few years. It's really the name of the game now, entrepreneurship and startups and SMEs, and it seems to be one of the main attractive things for people to start their own business, and for the youth, and everybody wants to manifest their own dreams and their own passions and their own skills. Now, how much of a dependency do we have as an Egyptian government on the SMEs, on the entrepreneurs, and is it progressing in the pace that is satisfactory for you, or do we need more?
Satisfactory compared to previous eras, yes, very satisfactory. Is this enough? Naturally, no. But let's take the things in perspective. First, we had the SME law enacted. The institution, which is the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Authority, has been established, and at the moment is chaired also by the Minister of Trade and Industry. You have a huge number of government initiatives by different ministries, each one in its own sector. And you have a huge number of projects. I'm honored to be implementing 6 actually startups, accelerators, incubators, projects funded by the European Commission on regional basis, cross-border cooperation. And all these together are supporting the Egyptian youth not to be an employee, but to start up a business. And the COVID era was a golden opportunity actually in the digital sector. Egypt is the leading one in Africa at the moment in startups in that sector. And we have companies that not only became multi-million, but also started expanding regionally. You have, I don't want to mention, I know it's forbidden to mention names, but we had companies that started in Egypt, and today they have branches and operating in 7, 8, 9 countries. They became $100 million worth after their IPOs. And these are the success stories we show to the youth who are entering our incubators, saying, these were sitting in your chair 3 years ago, and this is where they are today. So you can do it. And this is the message, you can do it, is the real message that need to be given to the kids. Access to finance was a problem. This is sorted out whether by the government initiatives you have in the Ministry of Trade and Industry under the SME organization. You have access to finance. You have the ETIDA in the Ministry of ICT. You have the Ministry of Planning. You have so many initiatives with incubators covering the whole country. And we are proud to see success stories coming from Upper Egypt. And one of the biggest success stories we have at the moment is coming from Upper Egypt. So this shows that having these incubators and providing the coaching, providing the technical assistance, access to finance, bringing them together, clustering these startups together to create a bigger startup and a critical mass to move forward. It's really, one is really proud when you see the result of this. But is it enough? It's never enough, because we're 100 million. We have 2 and something million every year. So you need to do more and more.
Yes. So does that mean that now we have some sort of a system that is established to actually help and encourage the startups and the SMEs, and at the same time absorb any sort of failures or absorb any sort of losses during the whole process? Because it is a very
more than absorb the failures is you're with them from the start. You prevent the failure. This is more important, because you don't throw good money after bad money. But we have, for example, in the European Union funded projects that we have under the cross-border cooperation program, you don't only have accelerators and incubators, but you also have competitions where we provide huge amounts of funding based on competitive bidding, where we evaluate the idea, the team, the spirit, the concept, and we see if it has the potential of succeeding, and we outreach the EU funding to these startups to be able to grow faster. But again, this is a drop in the ocean. There is a lot more to be done. But like I said, the government is sparing no effort. We see also angeling systems coming up. The big companies are actually becoming angels to small micro enterprises and startups, trying to help them to grow as part of their corporate social responsibility. So the ecosystem has improved. The ecosystem has grown up tremendously, and has, more important, grown geographically.
Yes. Now, sir, there's been a lot of talk regarding the economic zones that we have here in Egypt, a Russian one, a Chinese one, and we've been talking about really getting all the sort of investments within these economic zones. We've been talking about it for years, aspiring to see a lot of productivity within these zones. What have been the difficulties we're facing over the past few years in really seeing it fulfill the true potential it has? I mean, we understand we've been going through COVID. There's the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. There are obvious reasons why things are stalling, but when can we see it bear the fruit that we've planted?
No, it's bearing the fruit. There are investments that are coming up. Investments that were not affected by COVID, that were not affected by the crises that are happening. However, my problem is the feeding industry, the SMEs. You have anchor investors, and this is the concept we're using for marketing now, the zones, where we're attracting an anchor investor in whatever sector. And this anchor investor, his presence alone, we use it to encourage SMEs in that sector to follow. And this is the only way forward. And it's a change in the marketing concept. And start. Personally, I'm against having a country flagged economic zone. We should look at sectorial economic zones. You're talking about automotive, you're talking about petrochemicals. You need to cluster the industries together, because this is what will attract other anchor investors, and this is what will attract the hundreds of SMEs that will be feeding into that industry, and this is the way forward.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the industrial sector has been dubbed as one of the major economic boosters and contributors to the growth of the Egyptian economy. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.